Matt Sager recapping the latest episode of Better Call Saul, Season 5, Episode 8, Bagman. Couple of notes about this episode. Well, firstly, I'm going to state for the record, as far as I'm concerned, as a fairly hardcore Better Call Saul fan, I would even go so far as to call myself an aficionado. So if you take my word for this, I would say it's the best episode of Better Call Saul to date ever by a pretty decent margin. It also continues a trend we started seeing last episode of Better Call Saul, when Saul had this amazing speech he gave to Howard that was very reminiscent of Heisenberg. A speech that, it occurred to me, was a turning point in which this show is becoming, in addition to a prequel to an extended universe of Breaking Bad, it's now really starting to basically be Breaking Bad. Many Breaking Bad characters are starting to appear, more and more so. The timelines are coming close to essentially merging. And Saul, it turns out, does have his own inner monster, his own Heisenberg of sorts. Saul is the Heisenberg of Jimmy McGill. And we really got to see that with that explosive, basically his I am the one who knocks speech that he gave at the end of last episode to Howard Hanlon. He is both terrified of where he's going and empowered. After a lifetime of being put down, of being stepped on, of being neglected, of never being given a chance, never allowing his brilliance to be appreciated or encouraged, never having had the chance to flourish. Now that beast is becoming unleashed, and like Heisenberg, this episode, he learns the price. This episode was directed by Vince Gilligan and written by Gordon Smith, who I've talked about before. Guy who began his career on Breaking Bad as a PA on, I believe, the 3rd season. Worked his way up to being Vince Gilligan's personal assistant, then a writer's assistant, then a staff writer, was invited to be one of the first staff writers on Better Call Saul, directed an excellent episode recently, and now he's teamed up for the first time in a writer-director duo with Vince Gilligan for what is, again, the best episode of Better Call Saul today. In my Twitter feed last night, I caught a retweet from Ray Seahorn, who plays Ken, who, incidentally, after last week's episode, JMM, Patton Oswalt put out a tweet about her saying that she absolutely deserves and is frankly owed an Emmy for her performance, and that JMM cinched it. I agree. She retweeted Peter Dyseth, or Disseth, I do hope I'm pronouncing it correctly, but he's the guy who plays Bill Oakley, the deputy district attorney on Better Call Saul. He wrote of this episode, which is intense. Prior to it airing, he wrote, I can't say anything about tonight's episode of Better Call Saul, obviously, but I will tell you this. The cast and crew who worked on it came back changed. If you're able, watch this one live. It's going to be big. And Ray Seahorn simply added to that, he's not lying. Yeah, he's not. This show has taken a major step forward. Saul has lost all of his innocence, and frankly, I think I may have too after watching this episode. In JMM, last week's episode, he took on Lalo Salamanca as a client again, and was tasked both by Lalo, and for the details of this, you may want to go back and listen to my recap of that episode, or you may want to go back and watch the episode. But in addition to Lalo, he was tasked by Mike, under the direction of Gus Fring, to get Lalo out on bail. He was able to convince the judge that he wasn't a flight risk, and yes, Lalo can get out on bail, but because of the severity of the crime which he's being tried for, the murder of the travel wire salesman, the guy he did kill in Season 4 of Better Call Saul, bail was set at $7 million cash. Lalo said that's not going to be a problem, but I'm going to need you, referring to Saul, to go pick it up. Hence the title of this episode, Bagman. So Saul is not actually interested in going to the border, meeting with some cartel people and picking up bags full of cash, totaling $7 million. And he tells Lalo this, that he's really not, as Lalo has referred to him multiple times throughout this season, including in this episode. Saul does not want to be the, quote, guy for this. But Lalo assures him, hey, you're going to meet my cousins. We all know his cousins, those terrifying twins. They're good boys, he says. It's going to be real easy. You drive out to the border, pick up some money, come right back. No offense, but you're a little nobody. No one's going to mess with you. Saul's really not super hyped up on that. He suggests maybe Nacho Varga. He could get the job done. And after a little bit of back and forth, Lalo goes, yeah, you know what? I don't need you. Don't worry about it. I mean, I thought you were the guy, but maybe you're not the guy. And this is where Saul's curiosity, deviousness, mischievousness, need to be the bad guy, sort of need to play on the dark side of the tracks. And let's be honest, greed comes into play. He goes, how about if I do it for $100,000? That's an easy sell for Lalo. As Saul points out, that is a less than 2% commission, as has been made clear by Lalo's ease of obtaining $7 million cash. $100,000 is nothing to him. For Saul, it's a decent chunk of change. For most of us, it would be. Saul is still operating under the belief that what Lalo's saying is true, that this is going to be a walk in the park, that this is not going to be difficult, that this is just going to be a little ride to the border, pick up some money, ride right back. Saul's done shady stuff before, as both Saul and Jimmy, and this will be no different other than it's a little bit creepy and weird because now he really is going to be a friend of the cartel. But this $100,000 could lead to another job from the cartel that pays $500,000, yet another that pays $1 million. He is in his mind sort of tossing around the idea of a consequence-free friendship with the cartel in which he does little favors that aren't illegal and are not dangerous, that pay dividends, that will make his life a wealthy one, that will enable him to take good care of himself and Kim, and that will enrich him. He's going to regret this. Spoiler alert. The actual opening scene of this episode gives you a glimpse of the day-to-day operations of the cartel. It's these two entry-level grunts scrubbing out the gore and blood from the backseat of a Cadillac, laughing and throwing like body viscera at one another. Ha ha, here's some blood. Oh, knock it off, you rascal, you. Don't throw blood on me. And as they're goofing around and working, you see the boots, you see the faces, those scary Salamanca twins walk by them to go load up 2 duffel bags from a warehouse that is just loaded with cash. They easily get $7 million into these 2 bags. They stack it, count it, walk out with it, and somebody who's watching them, another low-level cartel guy with treachery on his mind, puts out a call to an as-yet unknown party that, hey, I got something you might be interested in. This is not going to be an easy pickup for Saul. But after that cold open with the cartel in the garage and the twins picking up the cash, we cut to Saul and Kim. Saul is delighted that he's got this little chore to do and he'll come back with $100,000. Kim is horrified that he got Salamanca out on bail, period. More horrified at the news that it's $7 million and just chilled to the bone that it's $7 million that Saul himself is going to go pick up at the border. And that's where we first hear the episode's title used in dialogue. As Kim says, Jimmy, you're an attorney, not a bagman. And this is a new kind of concern we're seeing from Kim for Jimmy. She's not angry. She's not disappointed. She's not concerned about his morality. She thinks he's gonna die, going out to the Mexican border to pick up millions of dollars from the cartel and bringing it back. Somehow Saul's convinced himself that it's just it's like a grocery run. Kim is very concerned, wants to go with him because she thinks he's not coming back. Kim proves herself to be both very smart in this episode, and at the same time, both her and Saul prove to be dangerously naive. I believe the events of this episode spell the beginning of the end for Kim. A terrible, tragic end. I think. It really looks that way by the time this episode's over. Saul says, don't worry about it. It's gonna go fine. Kim doesn't believe him, but what can she do? She's not Skylar White. She's not gonna pretend to be the boss of Saul. She believes in him, she loves him, and she just wants him to not die. We'll see how that works out for her. Next day, he's at the border waiting to meet the twins in the middle of nowhere in the desert, now pretty nervous, practicing. Yo soy abogado, yo soy abogado. I do hope I'm pronouncing that right. My own Spanish is pretty bad. But he's trying to say, I'm the lawyer in Spanish. Make a quick, clean exchange. The twins come out, and all that practice, all that cool he'd had yesterday, that, oh, this is just going to be a little quick pickup. You see those Salamanca twins, and your courage just disappears. Of course it does. He goes, yo soy abogado? Abogado. And the twins give him the look that they give everybody, friend, foe, family, murder victim. You get that death stare that the twins are so amazing at. You never know what it means. It could mean happy birthday. Could mean here's a pickaxe in your face. In this case, it means we're sizing you up before we hand over silently 2 duffel bags containing cash totaling $7 million. And that's that. All in all, as exchanges go, this actually does turn out to be pretty uneventful. Keep in mind the episode just started. Saul starts driving home. He can't believe how well this went and how smart he was. As he told Kim, no Suzuki Esteem has ever contained more than $50 cash in it. And here he is driving around with $7 million on his way to collect $100,000 for his troubles. He's singing $700 million cash in my bag, $700 million. He doesn't have a care in the world. Right on cue, Jeep comes out of nowhere and sticks right on his tail. He's going, come on, pass me, pass me, pass me. It is very obvious immediately that that's not what's going on here. 2 more trucks come out in front, blocking him. These are the people who were notified by the cartel early on. Traders, really, stealing cartel money for their own goods from this dopey little American abogado. Saul's surrounded, comes out of the car with his hands up, drops the keys. He knows what's going on. There's guns pointed at him from every angle. The keys are taken. One of the gang opens his trunk and pulls out the cash. They're going to leave with it, and Saul's like, fine, take it. It's okay. I don't want to die here in the middle of the desert. That's not what I came out here for. But regardless, this is the cartel. You know, Lalo Salamanca is this charming guy. Gus is this complicated individual. But let's be honest, the cartel, organized crime on that side of the border, they will leave heads in a pile, numbering in the dozens. And that's just Tuesday morning. They're going to kill this guy and not think twice about it. And then out of nowhere, sniper fire, and a massive gunfight ensues as this whole gang starts shooting like crazy. They don't know where it's coming from, but they're dropping like flies, so they're shooting back. Saul is instantly in shock, horrified, crouching down, hiding on the ground, in between and underneath and alongside cars. Cars which are too getting perforated, tires getting flattened as sniper fire continues. And all but one of these gang members is taken out by an expert sniper, who, it turns out, is Mike. Mike Ehrmantraut to the rescue for Saul Goodman. The beginning, as they say, of a beautiful friendship. Again, the episode ain't over yet. We're very early into it, and things are not going to get better anytime soon. Saul's alive for now. He's been saved by the same guy who sent him on this fool's errand, Mike. The guy who demanded he get Lalo out on bail in the first instance. And that's something. But it's just the two of them in the sweltering heat on the Mexican border alone. Far from home, no transport, and one of the cartel guys got away. One of the guys who knows they've got money and wants to kill them is going to be following them, shadowing them for a while. They are anything but out of the woods. And it's funny because Mike has saved Saul and is consoling him and trying to get him to come out of shock. He understands that he's dealing with a shock victim. He's telling him to sit and breathe, concentrate on the fact that he's alive, which is very important. That is a victory out of this situation. And he says, you'll be okay. And it's funny because as viewers of Breaking Bad, we know that that is technically true. But Bob Odenkirk has become such an amazing actor. Like Jonathan Banks, the actor who plays Mike, he's become so adept at acting without using dialogue, just with his expressions, just by the looks on his face. It's very clear that he's changed forever. He has lost a big part of his innocence, his soul. You can call me silly, you can call him silly, but it shows. This is a major turning point for him, one he didn't want, one he never counted on. And now we begin to see the consequences of this for Kim. Because as Saul tells Mike, my wife's going to be terrified for me. She expects me back tonight. She's going to think I died out here in the desert. And Mike cannot believe that Saul told Kim the truth about what he was doing today. And he says the words that just sink Saul's heart, that I believe portend doom for Kim. Words that sunk my heart. She's in the game now. That's right, because wives aren't supposed to know. It's funny, the whole point of their marriage last episode was that Kim would be protected and be able to protect Saul. Spousal privilege and all that. But spousal privilege, when you're in the game, includes protecting your spouse by not telling them information that they shouldn't know. Information that can get them hurt or killed. Information that puts them in the game. Oh, and it gets worse for Kim. She makes a terrible decision because she is terrified. The night passes. Saul had promised he'd be back earlier in the day, he told Kim, than she would be. And yet she spends a night alone, not hearing from Saul because there's no cell service out in the middle of the desert. So he can't call her and say, I'm at death's door, but not yet dead. And so she's very fearful for him. And she knows much more than she should. She is in the game. And in her fear, she goes and pays a visit to Lalo Salamanca, talking to him in a way that is very dangerous. That is to say, without reverence, without fear, and with an obvious knowledge of who he is, what he's done, his role in the cartel. She tells him that they have a common interest, Saul Goodman. She knows that he instructed Saul to go pick up $7 million bail money and that Saul never came back. And she's not gonna, as she puts it, report him to the authorities. She just wants to know where Saul is. And Lalo is astonished. Who the hell are you that he's telling you my business? Kim says, I'm his wife. Lalo finds that hilarious. Just like Mike, he cannot believe that Jimmy has placed his wife in harm's way in the game. He tells Kim that he thinks in all likelihood Saul ran away with the money, and if not, he's dead. Either way, doesn't really make a difference. He can't help her. Not interested in discussing the matter with her any further. He ends the visit, calls for the guards to bring him back to his cell. Kim now seems to have the specter of death hanging over her. Again, this is my opinion. Saul, meanwhile, is really dying out in the desert. The heat is unbearable. The walk is unimaginable. From Mexico to New Mexico, with only Mike as his companion. Mike, who is really caring, really smart, but is one man. And they're still being stalked by this remaining gangster. The sunburn and chapped lips on Saul are painful to look at. He is parched. He's got no water. He thought this was going to be a 2-hour tour. This is what would have really happened to Gilligan. He would be red, peeling, his lips ripped to shreds, and forced to urinate in a thermos to keep himself hydrated. Stumbling, suffering, barely hydrated, barely functioning at all. He has a horrible encounter with a cactus. A thorn or spine or whatever you want to call it is driven so deep into his toe. He's already kind of lost the will to live and go any further, a couple miles back at the very least. And he says, I'm done. Mike goes, no, we're not done. We're making camp because we can't travel at night. Saul goes, why? This is the best time to travel. The heat's going to be less awful. And Mike goes, yeah, and we're going to step into a prairie dog trap or something. We don't travel at night. But here, I've got something to keep us warm. And in a terrible omen for things to come, he produces a space blanket, one for himself and one for Saul. He offers it to him, says, look, I've got a spare. You're going to need it to keep warm. And Saul just looks at this horrible personification of everything wrong in his life, everything he sought to escape, this space blanket. It's hard to imagine any one item being more triggering and upsetting to him. He goes, no. He just takes his own shitty little blanket. That's more than enough for him. He asks Mike how in the world Mike still is able to keep going, because Saul doesn't want to keep going. He loves Kim. He loves his life. He wanted that $100,000, and he has really earned it, and quite a bit more at this point. But he's pretty much lost the will. So how does Mike do it? And Mike gives him the speech about knowing why he's out there. That it's got nothing to do with him. It's people he cares about at home, who he is going to do everything possible in his life to make sure that they're okay. And whether he lives or dies, he really doesn't care, as long as he knows that he's done everything possible to secure a good future for them. He's, of course, talking about Kaylee. And, of course, her mom, his daughter-in-law, Stacy. Saul, at this point, actually does have that, too. Kim. It's important to note that because by the time we meet him in Breaking Bad, he really doesn't have anything anchoring him other than his own self-interest. By the time we meet him in Breaking Bad, he has become that cockroach that Lalo thinks of him as. That is to say, a thing that survives for no other reason than survival. Just a thing that scurries to the safest place. But right now, he too has someone. And then the truck comes back. The remaining gunman who wants that money is hot on their tail, and he's got a passenger with him this time. And Mike advises Saul to duck down. They can't be seen. They don't want a firefight. They don't want to be killed. Saul cannot do this anymore. He can't keep going off the beaten path, making this a longer and more painful and arduous journey than it already would have been on foot. Hiding from these gunmen is making this horrible task so much more horrible, he's not going to survive it. So he tells Mike, get that sniper rifle ready, and walks out onto the road, space blanket in tow, to catch the light and make sure there's no way that they can miss him. He is basically baiting the bull. Here I am. Here are my 2 bags of $7 million in cash alongside me. Here's a big, shiny space blanket so you can't miss me. And Mike is, I think, genuinely impressed. He certainly takes advantage of it. And as the truck approaches, gets the sniper rifle ready, takes a shot, almost gets the driver, but doesn't. They're now almost on Saul. He reloads, cocks, takes a deep breath. So he's like a samurai now. He's in the zone. Takes another shot, and inches away before it hits Saul. Mike makes contact, hits the driver. Truck immediately flies off its axis, goes tumbling off the road, amazingly not hitting Saul, but instead veering off to the side. Saul is paralyzed, too scared to move, too tired to move. Had the truck simply barreled forward, he'd have been crushed by it, and I think he was ready for that, to be honest with you. But that's not what fate had in mind for him at this point. The truck's destroyed, the water it was carrying is also destroyed, and so Saul, having just avoided being killed, takes a big swig of his own urine from a Davis and Maine thermos. At this point, he's wearing a rag over his head. His face is blotched red. His lips are ragged. He looks like, honestly, the tableau and him with this head garb, he looks like nothing less than Lawrence of Arabia. And the journey ain't over yet. Him and Mike still have a long ways to go. And who knows what else they're going to encounter and how long they're going to survive on nothing but a space blanket and pee. But on that, we end the episode. As I said, the best episode of Better Call Saul to date. Easily. Fantastic. So great to see Vince Gilligan directing again, and what an amazing team he makes with writer Gordon Smith. Cannot wait for next week's episode. I will, of course, devour and recap that for you. And in the meantime, if you'd like to support this podcast, there's all kinds of ways you can do that. If you're watching on YouTube, please do like, share, subscribe, hit the bell for notifications. Or if you're listening on a podcast network, again, please subscribe, leave me reviews and stars. Positive ratings are always very helpful. If you're interested in financially supporting this podcast, that's also awesome. You can go to paypal.me/Matt Sager, make a one-time donation of any sum. You could also become a patron at patreon.com/Matt Sager. And if you'd like to stay in touch with me, I would love for you to do so. You can email matt@mattsager.com, call me at 646-535-4788, and please follow me on social media. My Twitter handle is @MattSager. My Instagram handle is RealMattSager. And of course, check out the podcast on Facebook at facebook.com/Matt Sager Podcast. I am a voice actor. To follow my voiceover business on Facebook, be it as a fan, a colleague, or if you're interested in casting me, you can check out my voiceover page on Facebook at facebook.com/Matt Sager VO. And for anything else related to me, including my voiceover reels, back episodes of this podcast, things I've written, and much more, you can find all of that on my website, mattsagervoiceover.com.